the supernatural.
Download the Legacy Edition of Spirit Blade, a full past audio drama, for free at spiritblade.com.
Hey guys, Peter Franson here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Let's talk a little bit about Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I just played a little over 5 hours of it on just a base PlayStation 4. I'm going to talk just briefly about the gameplay stuff, but I want to spend the bulk of my time talking about the themes, the worldview, the philosophy that is embedded in the story. So first, just some gameplay stuff. I think, as just a quick broad note, if you like Assassin's Creed, particularly Origins and Odyssey, and you want more, you're going to probably be pretty pleased with what is being offered in Valhalla. I do have to say, though, I think it's not quite ready, and that's certainly been the story for Ubisoft games, I think, at launch for a while now, that they really don't reach the prime in what they're really meant to be for like 6 months, 9 months, maybe even a year after their release is when they really kind of hit the sweet spot. And right now, the PlayStation 4 version, playing it on a base PS4, the graphics, the visual design I really like. And I see a lot of potential to really be wowed at what I'm looking at. But the execution, it's just kind of bumpy, almost literally, because there's lots of jaggy lines and pixelated stuff going on. There's lots of texture pop in and pop out, depending on what the camera's doing, and sometimes it takes its sweet time before those textures pop in. And I just did a quick back-to-back comparison with Ghost Recon Breakpoint and Assassin's Creed Odyssey on my PS4, and the pop-in is significantly less, and just the visual experience overall, I think, is far better in those. Well, maybe not far better. Let's not be cruel and unfair. Significantly better than the visual experience here, even though I would say that the visuals have more potential here. They just got to iron out those jaggies. They got to fix that pop in and some of the texture issues going on. So anyway, audio also, there's some weird things going on in the middle of cutscenes. The sound will cut out and then it will jump back in a second later, but as a result of it kind of being late and then playing catch up in the middle of the cutscene, the line that was interrupted momentarily will continue on, but then be cut off by the line by another character that's supposed to come after it. And so, and this happens about every other cutscene in my experience in the first 5 hours. Some little bit of that at least happens, and other just kind of strange audio things like when you come out of a cutscene and you start running for a good while, your boots, you won't hear your boots crunching, and I want to hear my crunchy boots. I really love Ubisoft for all their wonderful sound design in their games. It really is one of the most, to use an overused word, immersive elements of their game design for me, and so for it to not be functioning properly is a real distraction for me. The controls are also significantly different. Now, they did start changing up controls in Odyssey and Origins, I think, but I think in both of those games, they both had customization options that would allow you to choose different control schemes that I took advantage of. This control scheme, the main thing that bothers me is that your light attack is R1 and your heavy attack is R2. It reminds me of Horizon Zero Dawn. I really want my heavy and light attacks to be on those face buttons on like square and triangle. Now, they have a ton of customization options in this game, but unfortunately I haven't been able to reassign my buttons in a way that is satisfying, because they have also assigned like different gameplay elements to some of those same buttons that I would want to put on square and triangle. But if I put my light attack on square, that means this other thing has to be bound to square too, and I don't really want that. So I haven't worked out that logic puzzle or figured out if I'm going to be able to work it out in a way that will have a control scheme that I really like. I might, if I come back to this game, which I probably will at some point, I might just have to adjust, like I had to force myself to adjust while playing Horizon Zero Dawn. But like Horizon Zero Dawn, I think there's going to be plenty in this game for me eventually to enjoy, to make the adjustment worth it. One of the customization options that really stands out to me, and I think is possibly the most significant one, that I've seen in video games in a long time is the option to turn off nudity. Now, I wanted to see kind of how this feature was going to work, and so during my first 5+ hours, I kept nudity on with the intent of waiting to see the first appearance, then immediately cancel out, go to reload my save, change the effects, and see if it was like blurry pixels that they were going to put in, or some hastily redrawn bit of costume or something. To this point, I still don't know what it is, because even having nudity on, I have not seen any nudity in any cutscenes or any characters that you run into. So I don't really know how much work they put into making that seamless. Hopefully, they did a really nice job with that. But I'm at least thrilled to report that this is a feature. I don't know that I've ever seen this feature in any game. Now, granted, I can't remember the last game I played that had like out and out nudity as an element, but you know, when you've got games like Cyberpunk 2077 coming up that are clearly going to have a significant amount of nudity in them, and the Witcher series is also known for its nudity as well. I think that this is a really, really valuable feature, especially, you know, even if you're not, you know, I'm making content for those that are coming from a Christian perspective. If you've stumbled on this content and you're not a Christian, that's fine. You're still welcome here. It may not connect with you, but even from a non-Christian perspective, the science backs up the fact that being exposed to fictional simulations of violence is like a totally different ballgame from being exposed to fictional entertainment that involves nudity. That simulated violence just does not have the negative effect on us that parents and all kinds of different groups have been concerned about for years. On the other hand, it is scientifically indisputable that sexualized content has a negative effect on us sexually as sexual beings who would hope to have good sexual experiences in our lives. It actually hurts us to be exposed repeatedly to sexualized content and new content with sexualized nudity and things like that. So for them to finally recognize, maybe not that. Maybe they haven't looked at the science there, but maybe there's just like the some of the women's rights groups that have made noises loudly enough that we can actually, even though that's usually associated with, not necessarily Christian movements, sometimes from crowds that are, decidedly non-Christian. There is some unity in those crowds that are wanting to stand up for women's rights and not have women be objectified. There's unity there with us as Christians who want to say, yeah, we should not be objectifying women. We should not be encouraging lust in ourselves, and just valuing people purely for what they can do for us visually that is pleasurable. So anyway, that is such a big deal. Also coming from Ubisoft, who data mines a lot. They really take a lot of information about how their players are playing games, and they assemble all that and use the hard data to make decisions about how they're going to design their games in the future. They've been doing this for years. And so they know when people play as the male or the female version of the protagonist. They know when people use this setting or that setting. And so this is an opportunity for everyone who plays this game, who cares about women not being objectified, or, men for that matter too, but women certainly get the short end of the stick in this department. Everybody who plays these games that cares about that can turn the nudity off and then send a signal loud and clear that says, hey, listen, not all M-rated triggers, reasons that you would rate a game M, are created alike in the mind of all of your consumers. I feel like a lot of times in movies they'll say, oh, we have an R rating, so we might as well just throw in everything that triggers an R rating and just go nuts with it, But there's a lot of nuance in different people's perspectives, and certainly in the biblical Christian perspective. And so I'm just thrilled to see this setting thrown in there. I'd love it to see it in Cyberpunk 2077. We'll see. But anyway, the only other customization thing that I would say is the navigation. On the exploration settings of other Ubisoft games, you can have it be really kind of murky and obscure as to where you should go and what you should do next and how to get there. And they'll make it really easy to just put a marker there, where you can go and find what you're looking for. But in this game, even when I had the settings set to the most marker-heavy exploration, where it's like, I don't want to solve your puzzles, I don't want to listen to people giving me clues of where to go. Just put the marker on my mini-map and let me follow it. Well, I've still run into a few situations where it's like, no, go here and then find this person. They're somewhere in the village, good luck. And I'm like, I don't really want to do that, but I'm guess I'm going to have to anyway. So that's kind of odd given all the increased degree of control you have over so many aspects of this game and the gameplay. That's kind of odd that they would still have that kind of gameplay in there. In there, excuse me. Okay, so let's get into the themes. It's interesting playing as the Vikings here, and all the promotional materials. I was wondering, they're talking about wanting to show the friendlier side of the Vikings and that they're not just raiders, they also are farmers and they want to raise families and stuff like that. And I was like, oh boy. And then in the promotional materials, they would show like this evil Christian king and like, okay, well, I'm used to Ubisoft beating that horse of like, evil Christians are the best villains in our games, or whatever. I mean, that's an overstatement, but still. Just this really one-sided, twisted version of Christianity being represented in their games. I was like, okay, well, no surprise there, but really? Are we really going to make a game where we're just making the Vikings these very sedate and agricultural people? But they did not. They definitely did not. You are certainly seeing the human side of them, and that they do have humanity and emotions, and they do love and things like that. But, I mean, the TV show Vikings shows that as well, and I think displays kind of the mess of humanity involved in that, at least as they portray it. I'm not a history buff, so I don't know how much is accurate in the Vikings TV series or in this video game compared to the Vikings of history. Anyway, but in this game, Vikings are seeking glory, they're seeking wealth, and all basically at the expense of others. They are attacking other people groups, they're fighting them amidst their own people groups. They are just, their whole value system is based on glory, this idea of being significant, accomplishing great things that involve bravery and combat, and acquiring wealth. I mean, it's like this really exaggerated version of the American dream, where it's just like, go out there and do, and through your deeds show yourself to be significant, and have other people look at you, spotlight on me, I mean. The sense I'm getting so far is that of all the Assassin's Creed games that I've played, and I've played the majority of them, there's a few that I haven't, of the mainstream games. Of all the ones that I've played so far, I'm seeing more instances standing out to me where, the protagonists, the assassins, or in this case, someone who is maybe going to become an assassin, but the Vikings, are maybe kind of messy and broken and have some corruption in themselves as well. Even your own protagonist has some, maybe is kind of the bad guy, and so I appreciated that. I felt like there's a little too much emphasis on the Templars and the groups that they originate from being evil because they want to control and they want, too much order in the world or whatever. And we want freedom and, we want liberty and all that kind of stuff. And even though we're assassins, I feel like for a while they were leaning too hard on the side of Templars are only evil and assassins are only good. And now they're starting to show in this story, I think, that, oh, you know what, there might be some fundamental problems with the assassins and their worldview, These guys, you are raiding monasteries. That's like the first thing you do to help establish your settlement when you reach England within the first 5 hours of the game. And there's no other option that I could find. In order to progress in the quest, you need to raid at least one monastery. And they're talking about how helpless these priests and stuff are going to be, and then you can go there and get all their gold. And yes, when you get to the raids, you don't have to kill the priests. They have guards there that are actually the ones that you are in combat with, and the priests and civilians, they all run away, But still, you are clearly going into someone else's territory and disregarding what they value most and taking things that to them are sacred for your own to be used for your own purposes, So I appreciate that. Just kind of the moral complexity of that. I think that no matter what Ubisoft may be saying, and in the end, I think that they are so vague oftentimes in what they want to thematically say and philosophically say in their games that you can't really nail them down and say, okay, you're saying this, now defend this view. They don't articulate their views clearly enough in order to have to defend them. which is kind of a safe place to be. But anyway, I think that regardless of what they are or are not trying to say, this experience is very likely to stimulate some worthwhile thought about various issues of life and faith and good and evil and things like that. There's a moment, I want to share actually a clip from the game, and I'll share more than one clip here. There's a moment from the game where the Vikings are sailing down the river and they see Christianity being practiced, and they have some interesting comments. Take a look at this.
Look ahead there! Is that what passes for a town? Plain brick in a single rune to their timid god?
That rune is called a root, Doug. The cross upon which their god was sacrificed. It sits atop a monastery, a place of worship.
That cross killed their Christ, and now they display it in worship? Bizarre!
We carve idols of our gods and make wishes before them, like our sacrifices to Odin, the One-Eyed.
But we do not worship the wolf that kills him! That is the difference!
Whatever strangeness we see in these Saxons, they must think the same of us.
The hammer! Now there is a symbol worthy of a god! A bolt of lightning would take that cross clean off!
What's interesting to me about this scene is that the Vikings' misunderstanding of this basic core tenet of Christianity is also something that's misunderstood by, I think, a lot of people today. Patton Oswalt, I believe, was the comedian who compared the movie The Passion to making a movie about Einstein, who did all these great things, but the movie focuses on this day that he had a really bad case of diarrhea, and it's just about him being on the toilet all day. And what Oswalt didn't understand, if I'm correct, it might have been another comedian, was that what Christ did on the cross is central, and it was intentional, and it was actually this huge sacrifice of love, you know. So it's just interesting. It's surprising to me when I hear about people that haven't heard that basic truth, and I think that that is a call to us as Christians. Like, you know, we are well into a post-Christian culture in the Western world, and so we cannot assume that people understand the basic core truth concept of the gospel. So anyway, found that very interesting. Now here's one more scene from the Viking era gameplay that I think really displays some of the strangeness of the assassin's philosophy.
And what is this gift you wish to give me?
It will not come from me. It is a gift you must give yourself.
More riddles. What fun you are.
Let me say it another way. My gift is not for giving or taking. It is a way of living.
Still no clearer.
It is a thing better demonstrated than described.
Then I will wait.
Forgive my jest. This gift we call a leap of faith. It is one of our Brotherhood's most sacred rites. It is not a tool we use against our enemies, but an act we embrace to strengthen our resolve. Like your meditation, it centers our minds, steadies our hands, and purges fear from our hearts. To perform the leap of faith, you must give yourself over to something greater.
The gods?
Yourself. Embrace the hope that death will not come before you are prepared to meet it. Believe this, and you will fear nothing.
So notice he says that, you know, you need to embrace something greater, but he doesn't say greater than what. And I think maybe because usually we would say, a very popular idea is you need to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself, that's greater than yourself. But he didn't add that specific qualifier, greater than yourself, because it would have been, I mean, I don't know if this is the reason that it was phrased the way it was, but if you had added that qualifier, something greater than yourself, then it would have been obviously weird and paradoxical to say you need to embrace something greater than yourself. And what is that? Yourself. So what we see, I think, exposed here in the assassin's philosophy is that the highest value is oneself. They have this value of freedom, but there's no value above and beyond that, really. Like, okay, let's say you have this existence where you have absolute and perfect freedom. well, what should you use? What ought you use that freedom to do? And we don't really see that. That freedom itself is the highest value. And so the Vikings are actually very much in line with this idea of having freedom for themselves, embracing themselves and freedom to freely do what they want at the expense of anyone else who is not strong enough to summon up the greatness of themselves and inflict their freedom on other people. If that isn't clearly self-defeating in and of itself, then I would add that the game itself this time around, the writers this time around seem to be recognizing that at least the way they've stated the Assassin's Creed in the past has some logical problems. Here's an audio file that you can, when you're in the present day, you can open up your files and hear a recorded session between Desmond, who was the main present day protagonist in the first 3+ Assassin's Creed games. He's sitting down with like a psychologist or something that's also one of the assassins, and just kind of having a debrief and sharing just how he feels about being an assassin and some of the reservations that he has about how he came to become an assassin. And the way he talks about his experience, I think, highlights some of the logical problems inherent to the deepest values of the assassins. Take a listen.
Oh, hold on. I like what you said there. I want to get this for posterity. Say it again, nice and loud.
Seriously?
Sure, come on. If nothing else, it'll give me leverage with your old man.
Ah, that's your angle. Nice. What I said was, I wish I hadn't been born into the Assassins. I wish I had chosen this life. Is that good enough?
Sure, but why is that?
Because choice is the central idea of our creed. It underpins everything, right? It's about free will. It's about seeing the evidence before you and saying, yes, this is what I want, or no, this isn't for me. But when you're born into a group like this, or any other, like I was, you get mixed signals. You get told over and over again, this is what we believe. These are the rules. This is reality. No deviation. And if you question it, oh, they look at you like you killed a puppy. That's hardly free will. It's a weird irony when free will is your central belief, but nobody wants you to believe otherwise. I don't know how to say it exactly, but I always thought there was something self-destructive about our creed. If free will is the most important moral guidepost we have, we should be free to ignore it. To choose submission, for example. You know what I mean? Like, we should be free to side with the Templars. If it's really my choice, I could do that.
Right. It's almost self-refuting. A democracy could democratically elect a dictator or choose to get rid of democracy altogether. Within our creed is the seed of its own destruction. That's what makes it powerful, I think. And fragile.
Right. The more freedom you have, the more risky it is, you know? Anyway, my dad has mellowed over the years, but he was strict when we lived on the farm. He ran a tight ship. I never got the impression that I was free to choose my path forward. Our creed, our tenets, they were drilled into my head. By the time I was a teenager, I was following these rules out of a sense of duty. This was just what we did.
So this is what I mean when I say that the game seems to be reflecting on and acknowledging some problems among the foundational virtues of the assassins themselves, some ways in which they are no different from the Templars that they've been villainizing, throughout all the games in this series. And what they don't quite get around to acknowledging is that there is a self-defeating nature in this ultimate virtue of freedom. If there's nothing higher than freedom, then you can, have the freedom to choose to not have freedom, or you can have the freedom to choose to take away freedom from someone else. There's just not the problem. I think a lot of the times with relativistic philosophies, which does seem to be what was the foundation, whether intentional or not, of the philosophy of the early Assassin's Creed games, is this idea of relativism. Nothing is true. is that when you stop caring about truth, you stop caring about the meaning of words, then the more you start talking about a particular worldview, the more you start affirming ideas, the less you end up saying, because from a relativistic point of view, meaning is all proximate, and it doesn't have any objectivity to it, and so what are we even talking about? A great example of this is found in one of the documents that I found written by a member of the Assassins, who said, teasing the assassin maxim, nothing is true. Must be careful not to confuse truths with facts, however. A language game you will always lose. Well, that only applies if truth means something different than that which corresponds to reality, which is what truth means. So to say that nothing is true, which is one of the essential virtues, the essential truth claims of the Assassins, is a self-defeating statement, because truth really should be pretty close to being interchangeable with facts. You should be able to look at the Assassin's Creed and say, and rephrase that as nothing is factual or nothing corresponds to reality. Well, then that would include the statement that you just made. And so they need to define their terms more clearly. If you're going to use a different definition for the word truth, then you need to define your terms. And this is what happens so often in, you'll see, I'll see debates with different defenders of the Christian faith, and their opponents will be using words that they're not defining their terms. For example, when some folks will talk about nothing in talking about the pre-Big Bang vacuum that existed, they refer to that as nothing. Well, that is not literally nothing. It's a very active vacuum that's alive with all kinds of things going on, So anyway, we've got to define our terms. And so I think it's valuable when we're talking to each other as Christians, or when as Christians we're talking to non-Christians and we're getting into some of these things, it's really valuable to say, can you tell me what you mean by that? I'm not sure that I'm quite following what you mean by that word, and allowing these definitions to be put out on the table, because only then can we make progress, and I feel like whether it's just inherent to the writer or writers of this game, or if it's just, inherently the nature of exploring philosophy in a fictional story instead of in a philosophical textbook or in a more formal environment that's focused to that purpose. Whatever the reason, I think we see the writing falling into this trap of not defining terms, and as a result, not saying anything that can really be critically evaluated. Anyway, I imagine that I'm going to come back to this game. I imagine I'm going to enjoy it. Right now, it's not for me. I still haven't finished all the DLC for Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I am nowhere near, even though I finished the campaign, I'm nowhere near getting all the potential playtime out of Ghost Recon Breakpoint. And so that's kind of two big open world third-person Ubisoft-y games that I've got on my plate right now. I am not feeling any draw to this game, especially with some of the little glitches and things going on. So probably at least 6 months to a year from now, or maybe after I eventually, theoretically, get a PS5 someday, if anybody can ever do that, that isn't using bots or whatever, then I'll maybe give this game another look, and by then it'll probably be discounted in some form, and so I think that's probably the best route for me to go. But I do think that as I said before, whatever may be the intention or may not be the intention in the themes and the worldview being presented in this game, I think it is ripe for all kinds of worthwhile thought as you are playing the main protagonist, as you're interacting with the different ideas being presented. And I guess that's all I have to say for now. Thanks so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Do you believe in the supernatural?
Download the Legacy Edition of Spirit Blade, a full past audio drama, for free at spiritblade.com.